නිවසේ මෙවැනි මතුපිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන විම් ක්ලීනර්ස්.
Tonight, concealing the truth. Port officials say Express Pearl hid the acid leak as nanotechnologists offer a ray of hope in dealing with the ecological damage.
We have the necessary equipment to finalize and to come up with oil spill applications, utilize such homegrown technologies and innovations.
Urgent expansion. The country's vaccination program spreads outside the western province for the first time to Gaul, Mathur and Kurunegala. Productivity boost. Sri Lanka and the World Bank ink agreement for European Union financial grant for agri-sector development. War crimes in focus. UN Human Rights Commissioner calls Israeli Gaza aggression akin to war crimes and confirms Palestinian right to self-defense. All this and much more coming up on this Thursday, the 27th of May, 2021.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando. In your top stories for tonight, the UN Human Rights Council says that the people of Palestine have as much right to self-defense as same as Israel. This was stated by United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet, who added that Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip would amount to war crimes given the large number of deaths and injuries as well as damage to civilian infrastructure. Bachelet added that while there remains no doubt that Israel has the right to defend its citizens and residents, Palestinians too, however, have the same rights. The issue was taken up today at the United Nations Human Rights Council's 30th special sessions called for by the Organization for Islamic Cooperation that urged the Council to investigate the grave human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem.
Israel has come in for intense criticism at the United Nations Human Rights Council's 30th special sessions that was convened by Pakistan as the coordinator of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation to discuss the grave human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. The draft resolution presented by the OIC calls for the Council to urgently establish an ongoing independent international commission of inquiry in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in Israel. The text also called on investigators to probe all alleged violations and abuses of international law linked to the recent violence. Further, the draft also called on investigators to look at underlying root causes of recurrent tensions and instability, including systematic discrimination and repression based on group identity. Long-standing and systemic impunity for international law violations has thwarted justice, created a protection crisis and undermined all efforts to achieve a just and peaceful solution, it added. Speaking at the commencement of the sessions this morning, UN Human Rights High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet raised concerns at the high levels of civilian deaths and injuries during Israel's 11-day attack on the Gaza Strip. Bachelet warned that if Israeli attacks were found to be disproportionate in their impact on civilians and civilian infrastructure, they would without a doubt constitute war crimes. She also pointed out that she was yet to see evidence that civilian buildings in Gaza hit by Israeli attacks were being used for military purposes, as claimed by the Israeli military. Although reportedly targeting members of armed groups and their military infrastructure, the Israeli attacks resulted in extensive civilian deaths and injuries, as well as large-scale destruction and damage to civilian objects. Bachelet added that with no doubt existing that Israel has the right to defend its citizens and residents, Palestinians too have the same rights as Israelis.
Despite dousing the fire aboard the Express Pearl, the stricken vessel that unleashed a marine catastrophe for Sri Lanka continues to remain a hot topic. However, in new developments, port officials revealed that the vessel's captain failed to disclose information on the leaking nitric acid container before arrival in Sri Lankan waters. The marine and coastal pollution ascertained thus far remains at enormous levels, with the Marine Environment Protection Authority planning a major compensation claim. Meanwhile, researchers at the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology offered a ray of hope today, stating that Sri Lanka has homegrown technology to deal with any major oil spill.
Firefighting operations entered a seventh day today to douse the fire aboard the Express Pearl container vessel. The vessel caught fire while at anchorage outside the Colombo port, leading to an explosion that made matters worse. Meanwhile, yesterday, Executive Chairman of Express Feeders, Tim Hartnell, disclosed to a leading maritime news provider that the acid leak was first detected by the crew thousands of kilometers away from Sri Lanka while sailing through the Arabian Sea. He added that upon detection, the ship's captain had contacted the ports of Hazira on the west coast of India and the port of Hamad in Qatar, requesting clearance to offload the container in question. The company's executive chairman alleged that the requests were denied by the two ports and called it a case of not in my backyard syndrome. Subsequently, the ship had made its way to Sri Lanka. With that, First at 9 sought a clarification on the matter from the company today. In response, Director of MTI Network for Southeast Asia, a public relations consulting firm engaged by Express Feeders, dismissed reports on entry being denied to the vessel, adding that the ship underwent discharge and loading operations in both ports before continuing on its planned journey to Colombo. He added that the leaking container could not be offloaded due to the unavailability of specialist facilities or expertise to deal with it in both the ports. With that, the question remains as to how the vessel gained access to anchor outside the port of Colombo with a leaking nitric acid container on board, and were the Sri Lankan authorities aware of the issue. The chairman of the Ports Authority, retired General Daya Ratnayaka, offered a clarification.
ඒ වරායවලට ගිහිල්ලා නැංගුරම්ලා ඒ බඩු භාරාදිය මුවමාරු කරගෙන පටවගෙන බාලා තමා කොළඹ වරායට සේන්දු වෙන්නේ. නමුත් මේ කාන්දු පිළිබඳ අපේ වරාය අධිකාරියවත් ඒ පර්යන්තයේ කණ්ඩායමවත් අපිව ඒ ඒජන්සි සමාගම විසින්වත් අපිට දැනුවත් කරලා නොතිබීම තමයි මෙතන ගැටලුවට මුල් වූ කාරණාව. ඉතින් ඒ පිළිබඳ අපේ සොයා බැලීම් සිදු වෙනවා ජාත්‍යන්තර නීතිය අනුව කටයුතු කරන.
Meanwhile, the focus has also fallen on the impact of the chemicals on board the MV Express Pearl, as the Sri Lankan seas have now been exposed to a serious marine environmental risk.
We observed with the debris coming out of the vessel, there's a huge environmental pollution, coastal pollution occurred in the area starting from Likkovita up to Maoya, Chilau. And today we got the information that these debris has actually gone up to the areas of Vallavatta, Bambalapiti as well as Moratuwa. Based on our inspection yesterday, we identified 10 critically polluted areas, and we have manned that area with nearly 975 army officials plus Coast Guard as well as Navy officers, and we are actually continuously doing the beach cleaning. This exercise will at least continue for next 2 weeks because coastal pollution is enormous, plus there's a large volume of plastic pebbles, and these pebbles, of course, it is very difficult for us to clean, and also we believe major portion of these pebbles will store underwater. In long time, this will create a huge environmental issue of microplastic. The damage to the environment is enormous, but we are trying our best to clean this as much as possible.
Also expressing views on the matter, leading chemical oceanographer Professor Lihini Alubihari highlighted that the larger concern remains of a potential oil spill. According to oil spill experts, any damage to marine life by the chemicals will be immediate.
pebbles. මෙන්න මේ pebble ශ්වසන පද්ධතිය සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම මේ ප්ලාස්ටික් වලින් හිර වෙලාද.
Meanwhile, a model put together by oceanographers on where the debris and oil from the MV Express Pearl would end up. The blue section is where the debris is expected to wash up when released from the ship's location on the 25th, and the coloured dots are where we can expect things to end up when released on the 26th and 27th. With currents shifting southward, we can expect to see more accumulation of debris towards Colombo and the south. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology urged authorities to utilise homegrown nanotechnology in dealing with any possible oil spill. Speaking to First at 9, research scientist Lihini Jaisingha says that Slintech is equipped to come up with applications in the event of an oil spill and prevent major damage to marine life.
The Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology has come up with two types of technologies to overcome oil spill cleanups. One includes the use of waste cotton, and the other one includes the use of graphene, which is a value-added material from graphite. So right now at Slintech, we have large-scale production of graphite. So Sri Lanka has one of the world's purest graphite, and we have the necessary equipment to finalize and to come up with oil spill applications. So I believe it is the responsibility of Sri Lankan officials to utilize such homegrown technologies and innovations in emergency situations such as this, so that we can reduce the environmental catastrophe that it may result from such incidents.
The Marine Environment Protection Authority chairperson added that legal action will be filed soon against the relevant parties seeking compensation.
We are going to take appropriate action to claim whatever the environmental damages caused to our country, caused to our marine environment, caused to our coastal area. When we are actually going to claim compensation, apart from the environmental loss, economic losses to the communities will also be taken into consideration.
Meanwhile, by this evening, the Sri Lankan Navy, along with the Air Force and the regional partners, managed to douse the fire aboard the vessel. The fire, however, has left the containers and the ship in ruins, with the owner now accepting a constructive loss, which in maritime terms translates to the cost of repair of a damaged item being more than its current value. Meanwhile, cargo from containers that fell overboard following the explosion aboard the ship continue to wash ashore. To prevent contamination, residents were urged by the authorities to keep away from the cargo. However, people were seen disregarding the warnings. 8 residents who disregarded warnings and took away the washed-up cargo were arrested this morning. Meanwhile, some residents who took away the washed-up cargo have reported allergic reactions. That said, as for some people, the continuous warnings about the dangers of the situation have fallen on deaf ears.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම.
Sri Lanka is set to receive a grant from the European Union towards the World Bank-administered agriculture sector modernization project. An agreement was signed to this effect between the Ministry of Finance and the World Bank, which will see the promotion of inclusive and resilient growth, agricultural productivity, farmer incomes and job creation.
The Ministry of Finance and the World Bank recently signed an agreement for a new grant from the European Union to support the country's agriculture sector modernization project. The grant is part of the European Union's €25 million contribution to the World Bank-administered $125 million project. The agriculture sector modernization project has to date benefited more than 48,000 smallholder farmers across Sri Lanka, creating more than 1,500 new jobs through investments in agribusiness. Speaking on the new grant, World Bank Country Director for Sri Lanka, Faris Haddad Zervos, stated that Sri Lanka's agricultural sector and its deep historical roots will continue to underpin rural livelihoods and enable the country to rise to future challenges. In addition, he stated that while agriculture is important to Sri Lanka's economy, the World Bank will continue to work with its partners to promote inclusive and resilient growth through increasing agricultural productivity, farmer incomes, and creating jobs in the sector. Meanwhile, European Union Ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Dennis Chaibi, stated that by contributing to the agriculture sector modernization program, the EU aims to support smallholder farmers and make a positive impact on the lives of the most vulnerable communities in Sri Lanka. The additional funding is expected to target the expansion of agriculture clusters in 5 districts, namely Kandy, Badulla, Ampara, Kilinochchi and Vavuniya, targeting 25,000 additional beneficiaries, including 6,000 direct members of farmer-producer organizations.
For the first time since Sri Lanka's national inoculation program commenced earlier this year, people in high-risk areas residing outside the Western Province were administered with the Sinopharm vaccine today. As such, a total of 125,000 vaccines have been allocated to health officials in the districts of Gaul, Mathura and Kurunegala. According to the Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva, the remaining 375,000 vaccines will be reserved in order to be used later as the second dose.
Since Sri Lanka began its national vaccination program on the 29th of January this year, vaccinations have been predominantly carried out in high-risk areas within the Western Province. This was due to the Western province reporting the larger portion of daily infections compared to other provinces. However, after Sri Lanka received 500,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine yesterday, measures were taken to carry out inoculations in selected high-risk areas in the districts of Galle, Matara and Kurunegala.
බස්නාහිර පළාතින් ඉවත එන්නත් කිරීමේ ක්‍රියාවලිය ආරම්භ වුණා. මේ අලුත් ලැබුණු එන්නත් තොගවලින් පළවෙනි තොගය හැටියට එන්නත් කුරුණෑගල දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 50000කුත්, ගාල්ල දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 50000කුත්, මාතර දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 25000කුත් වශයෙන් එන්නත් තොග නිකුත් කරලා තියෙනවා. අපි මෙතෙන්දි මතක තබා ගත යුතු දෙයක් තමයි ඉතාමත් සීමිත එන්නත් තොගයක් ලැබී තිබෙන නිසා තෝරාගත් අධි අවදානම් ප්‍රදේශවල තමයි මේ එන්නත් කටයුතු ආරම්භ කරන්නේ. අනෙක් ප්‍රදේශවලට එන්නත් තොග ලැබුණු වහාම ව්‍යාප්ත කරන බව මේ වෙලාවේ අවධාරණය කරන්නත් ඕන. ඒ වගේම ඒ සඳහා අනවශ්‍ය ලෙස පොදිගැසීමින් ඒ එන්නත් ලබා ගැනීමට කටයුතු කරන්න එපායි කියලා අපි ඒ සියලු දෙනාගෙම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
In other developments, a study conducted by the Journal of American Medical Association confirmed that the two Sinopharm vaccines developed by the China National BioNTech Group have an efficacy of 72.8% and 78.1%. According to the study, none of the volunteers given an active vaccine developed severe complications from the virus. Meanwhile, Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva stated today that a total of 375,000 doses from the stock of Sinopharm vaccines received recently from China will be reserved in order to administer second doses. The remaining 125,000 doses are currently being used to vaccinate high-risk groups in the Galle, Matara and Kurunegala areas. The Army Command added that Sri Lanka is due to receive another consignment from the Sinopharm vaccine from China in mid-June. In the meantime, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals Professor Channa Jayasumanam announced that Sri Lanka will receive 50,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik vaccine tonight. Meanwhile, health authorities have vaccinated 521,470 people using the Sinopharm vaccine so far. Included in this figure are 3,646 vaccinations conducted yesterday. In addition, the second dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was administered to 699 people yesterday. This raises the overall number of people who have received the second dose of the vaccine to 341,541.
Meanwhile, health authorities say that there is no significant benefit in wearing two-face masks to avoid contracting the COVID-19 virus. Deputy Director General of Health Services Dr. Hemantha Herath said today that there was no scientific evidence to suggest that wearing two-face masks would offer more protection than wearing a single mask. Dr. Herath stated that the efficiency of a face mask depends on whether the user wears it properly at all times and follows proper etiquettes.
As the UK variant of COVID-19 continues to spread rapidly in Sri Lankan society, health authorities continue to urge people to wear face masks when moving about in public, maintain a 1 meter distance and sanitize their hands. As such, people have been spotted wearing double face masks based on social media posts to aim extra protection from infection. However, what the public seems to have forgotten is that the primary aim of wearing a face mask remains to minimize the risk of a wearer infecting others. Deputy Director General of Health and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemantha Herath addressed the issue today, saying that wearing a single mask in the proper manner is the best way to go about it.
නියමිත මුව ආවරණ ඒවා පැළඳීමට නියමිත කාර්යයන් සඳහා සහ නියමිත පැළඳිය යුතු ආකාරයට ඒක පැළඳීම තමයි වඩා වැදගත් වෙන්නේ මුව ආවරණ දෙකක් පැළඳීමට වඩා ඒ වගේම අපි ඒ මුව ආවරණ පැළඳීමෙන් පසුව අපිට ඒකෙන් ඒ ආවරණය නිතර ඇල්ලීම ඒ වගේම ආවරණය ඇතුලෙන් මුහුණ නාසය කට අතගෑම ආදී ක්‍රියාවලියන් හරහාත් අපි මේ මුව ආවරණය දැමීමේ මූලික පරමාර්ථය නැති වෙනවා ඒ නිසා තමන් ළඟ තියෙන මුව ආවරණය ඒ ආකාරයෙන් නිසි පරිදි පැළඳ සිටීම තමයි මගේ හිතේ වඩා වැදගත් වෙන්නේ මුව ආවරණ දෙකක් පැළඳීමෙන් අමතර වාසියක් ලැබෙනවායි කියන්නේ සාක්ෂි මේ දක්වා ලැබිලා නැහැ.
Meanwhile, 2,377 COVID-19 infections were reported across all 25 districts of the island yesterday. Out of yesterday's caseload, the Colombo district reported the highest with 573 cases, while Gampa recorded 530. In addition, the district of Kandy reported 257 cases, while 151 infections were reported from Trincomalee, 129 from Ratnapura, and 128 from Kalutara. The districts of Galle reported 92 cases, while Kurunagal reported 63 and Nuwara 57. The remaining 345 cases were reported from 16 other districts. Further, 52 foreign arrivals were also included in yesterday's tally. In the meantime, 1,782 new COVID-19 infections have been confirmed so far. In other developments, a COVID-19 infected patient who had escaped from a private hospital in Kollupiti on the 25th of May was arrested by the Dammana police.
වම්පාර ප්‍රදේශයේ වරිපතන් චේන ප්‍රදේශයේ පදිංචි පුද්ගලයෙකු බවටයි වාර්තා වී තිබුණේ. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් කොල්ලුපිටිය පොලිස් ස්ථානය මගින් විමර්ශන ආරම්භ කිරීමෙන් අනතුරුව ලංකාවේ සියලුම පොලිස් ස්ථාන වෙත ඔහු පිළිබඳව දැනුම් දෙන්න ලැබුවා. එසේ දැනුම් දීමෙන් අනතුරුව ඊයේ දින දමන පොලිස් ස්ථානය මගින් මේ පුද්ගලයා අත්අඩංගුවට ගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඔහු මේ වන විට පල්ලෙමුණ ප්‍රතිකාර මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ සඳහා යොමු කර ඇති බවට වාර්තා වෙනවා. මොහු අදාළ රෝගයට ප්‍රතිකාර ලබා දීමෙන් අනතුරුව සහ නිරෝධායන කාල සීමාව ඉක්මවීමෙන් අනතුරුව මොහුට එරෙහිව නිරෝධායන සහ රෝග වැළැක්වීමේ ආරක්ෂා පනතේ ප්‍රතිපාදනය යටතේ කටයුතු කිරීමට නියමිතව තිබෙනවා.
In the meantime, after 29 COVID-19 related fatalities were confirmed yesterday, the country's overall deaths rose to 1,298. All the deaths had occurred between the 20th and the 26th of this month. Meanwhile, 1,411 COVID-19 patients recovered today, bringing the country's overall number of recoveries to 143,789. Currently, the island's active COVID-19 cases stands at 30,383.
A special island-wide drone operation by Sri Lanka Air Force and police commenced today in order to arrest people who violated the island-wide imposed restriction order. Meanwhile, constant checking on vehicles were conducted by police to nab suspects who violate the restrictions and move on roads without a valid reason.
With strict island-wide restrictions in place to control the virulent spread of COVID-19, law enforcement authorities are continuing operations to ensure the public respects quarantine law. With that being the case, strict operations have been launched island-wide to bring violators to book. During the course of yesterday, 587 persons who violated the quarantine law by failing to wear face masks and maintain social distancing were arrested by the police. Of this total, 155 suspects were arrested from the Matale district alone. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Air Force, along in a joint operation with the police, commenced an island-wide drone reconnaissance operation to identify violators in hard-to-monitor areas. In addition, the police have also stepped up vehicle checks on roads.
Yesterday, a special operation has been conducted in the Colombo city from 7 to 9 in the morning in order to check whether the vehicles that are moving on roads belongs to essential services or not. Accordingly, 735 vehicles have been checked by the police randomly, and accordingly it has been observed that 28 vehicles had moved on roads without any reason, and the persons who were on board in those vehicles were not the employees of essential services. So therefore, those vehicles have been taken into police custody along with the persons.
In the meantime, a raid conducted by the Police Special Task Force yesterday in Bogawan Talawa led to the arrest of 6 suspects who were engaged in illegal gem mining. Speaking on this matter, police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana warned the public to refrain from engaging in such acts or risk legal action.
The raids had been conducted in 3 different places in Bhagawan Talawa area. Accordingly, 6 suspects have been arrested in this connection. The restriction order was implemented yesterday, and the suspects have committed an offence under the quarantine law because during the restriction period they have conducted illegal activity. In addition to that, they have committed an offence under the Mines and Minerals Ordinance.
In the meantime, with all public gatherings including weddings banned, the health authorities and the police acted to prevent a wedding being held in Vennapur today. The police are planning on prosecuting the organisers of the wedding as well as its attendees. Meanwhile, a Gazette notification was issued today declaring several new essential services. According to the Gazette, any service that needs to be fulfilled or required as per Article number 3 of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act number 51 of 1979, petroleum and liquid gas production as well as fuel supply and distribution, public and goods transportation by Sri Lanka Railways and Sri Lanka Transport Board have been added to the essential list. Further, services required for the disposal of oil or fuel from ships, as well as transportation, unloading, storage, handing over and removal of fuel or oil as per the Customs Act are also included. What's more, all services offered by district secretariats, divisional secretariats, Gram Nildaris and Samruddhi development officials have also been made essential. In addition, services provided by the central banks, state banks and insurance companies, as well as waste management activities carried out by local government bodies are now considered essential services.
The Department of Meteorology says that the country can expect a reduction in the heavy rains within the next few days. However, the department says that showers can occur at times as the southwest monsoon has established over the island.
Since last week, several areas of the country have been experiencing heavy rainfall, with the southwest monsoon having established over the island. During the past 24 hours, damages to several houses and other properties were reported from several districts including Galle, Matara, Puttalam, Kegalle and Hambantota. Further, power interruptions as a result of strong winds along with a heavy deluge was also reported. According to the Ceylon Electricity Board, 70,000 families have experienced electricity outages caused by the inclement weather. Further, the CEB says that steps have been taken to restore power supply to all affected areas.
As southwest monsoon conditions are fully established over Sri Lanka, we can expect showers at times in western, central, Sabaragama provinces as well as in Galle and Matara districts during next few days. However, we expect gradual reduction of rainfall amount during next few days. However, isolated fairly heavy falls of about 75 mm are also likely over western slopes of the central hills. In terms of wind, strong gusty winds up to 50 km per hour is likely over the western slopes of the central hills as well as along the western and southwestern coastal areas and north, north central and northwestern provinces tonight and tomorrow morning. Sea conditions extending from Puttalam to Pottuvilluya, Colombo will be very rough at times.
In the meantime, despite water levels of rivers currently subsiding, the authorities continue to urge the public to remain vigilant.
The water levels of the rivers, especially from the Akkanagalu, Kalani and Kalu, Ging and Nilwala, so they are completely declining and falling in the water levels. That is very important, but still people need to be alert. If any case of the rain, that we are continuously alerting the communities who are prone to those kind of disaster situation. We are contacting all the stakeholders and the technical departments and all, and we are analyzing the data and we are continuously alerting the communities if needed.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa encouraged all stakeholders involved in the agriculture sector today to take measures to produce biofertilizer required for upcoming harvest seasons in the country. The head of state also proposed that measures be taken to import biofertilizer from overseas, just as chemical fertilizer was imported in the past.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa held a special discussion with the Ministers of Agriculture, Ministry officials and organic fertilizer manufacturers.
පරිසරිතකාමී පෝර නියම ව්‍යාපෘතිය යටතේ අන්තිම කන්න තුනේ අපි දැනට අක්කර ලක්ෂයක් විතර කරලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට දැනට අපේ කැපැසිටි එක තියෙනවා සර් අවුරුද්දකට අක්කර ලක්ෂ 1.5කට විතර වගේ දැනට. සහ අපේ නිෂ්පාදනයෙන් අක්කරයකට අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ කන්නයක් සඳහා ලීටරය. ඒකින්ද අපිට මේක අප්ස්කේල් කරලා මම හිතන්නේ අපිට අවුරුදු 2ක පමණ කාලෙකින් මුළු ලංකාවටම අවශ්‍ය බයෝෆර්ටිලයිසර් ප්‍රමාණය දෙන්න පුළුවන් ලික්විඩ් එකක් විදියට.
ඒ අනුව ජනාධිපතිතුමනි එතුමලා අපිට ලිඛිතව බාර දීලා තියෙනවා. ඔවුන්ගේ නිෂ්පාදනය වැඩි කරගන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රමාණය. ඒ වගේම නිෂ්පාදනය වැඩි කරගන්න තියෙන බැරියර්ස් ඒ පිළිබඳ කියන්නේ බැංක් ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ඇසිස්ටන්ස් ඒ වගේම ඉඩම් ඇතුළු ගරුරු ගණනාවක්. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමනි අපි අමාත්‍යාංශය අපේ රාජ්‍ය අමාත්‍යතුමා සෙක්‍රටේරියට් එකක් දාලා ඒකට අවශ්‍ය පහසුකම් සියල්ල ලබා දෙන්න අපි කටයුතු කරනවා.
අපි තෝරගත්ත නම් මොනවද භාවිතා කරන පොහොර ඒ අවස්ථාවන්ට කියලා ඒවා අපේ රටේ පුළුවන් තරම් නිෂ්පාදනය කරන්නට උත්සාහ ගන්න ගමන් ඉදිරියට එන කන්නේදී ඒවා නොඅඩුව තියෙන්න කඩිනමින්ම අපිට වෙන රටකින් මේව ගේන්න පුළුවන්. කොහොමද දැන් අපි රසායනික පොහොර විශාල වශයෙන් ගෙන්නවනේ. ඒ වෙනුවට අපි කාබනික පොහොර වර්ග ඒවා ගේන්න ඕනේ. ඒවා ඕන තරම් භාවිතා කරන රටවල් තියෙනවා. ඒ රටවල් වලින් බලලා හරි ප්‍රමිතියකින් තියෙන පොහොර වෙලාවට ගේන්නට ඕනේ.
Speaker of the Parliament Mahinda Yapavardena signed off on the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Bill, the Parliament's Communication Department announced today. Following this, the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act will come into effect today. The bill was passed with amendments to it by a majority vote in Parliament on the 20th of May. With the bill now in effect, a commission will be appointed to govern the special economic zone and enable businesses to operate in any recognized foreign currency within the Colombo Port City limits. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good